Welcome back to the podcast. I am here with Patrick Reilly, the founder, president, and CEO of the Cardinal Newman Society. They are a partner organization of ours, and we are so honored to be recommended by them as a devoutly Catholic university. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Yes, thank you. And like I said, we're so grateful to partner with you all, and we're so excited about your mission. And so I just wanted to hear from you, what inspired you to found the Cardinal Newman Society, and tell me a little bit about what your mission looks like now.
Sure. Yeah. So our mission is to promote and defend faithful Catholic education. And so we're looking for a reform and a renewal of strong, faithful Catholic education with strong Catholic identity, strong Catholic curriculum, strong Catholic formation of students. And so our work is we base through the Newman Guide, we uphold strong, faithful institutions that are model institutions, models of what our patron St. John Henry Newman advocated and tried to build himself through his lifetime. And in upholding those models, we have certain standards that we use in evaluating those schools. And so we also work with any school, elementary, secondary, college, graduate programs, trying to help them to meet those standards and to rise to the level of what the church calls Catholic education to in terms of forming young people to be true servants of God in every respect.
Wow, that's so beautiful. I've always wondered, I come from a rural area, and we had no way of vetting the Catholic school system unless y'all had existed. And so I'm so grateful for you all. What does that look like in terms of tangibly? How do we know, or how do you all go through and figure out, are they aligning themselves to the church entirely or not?
Yeah, so we've gone through in the early years, the organization was largely born out of uh, experience and disappointment
Mm,
with education,
mhm,
Catholic education. Much of Catholic education today is not very strongly Catholic. It's
mhm.
lost a number of the things that made Catholic institutions so strong in the past. Not only in terms of religious formation, but even in terms of liberal arts formation and teaching young people to be able to think well and to form them as humans, not just as cogs in a wheel for a
Absolutely.
particular job. And um, so, initially it was a lot of, we would go in and look at institutions and look at them top to bottom and basically look for anything that might uh, lead someone astray, really. So it was
Mm,
almost a negative outlook.
okay.
And then we spent several years digging into all of the church documents on Catholic education. There are many,
Mhm.
especially after Vatican II. There are a lot of documents exploring what does it mean for a school or a college to be authentically Catholic and
Right.
to teach in the Catholic way. And we wanted to make sure that our standards were not only matching what the church says. We wanted to begin with what the church says, not with what we think. But we also wanted it balanced properly so that, we're not overemphasizing one criterion over another, that we're balancing it in the way that the church documents do. And so we've developed a whole set of standards on curriculum, personnel, student life, dorm issues, all of these different things that come in at different levels of Catholic education. And, we think that they very well accurately reflect what the church teaches. But of
Mhm.
course, those church documents don't tell you what to do under particular circumstances or how to deal with a student who may be exhibiting a certain behavior or a faculty member who's, in some way, maybe teaching something that there's questions about, is this appropriate or is this the
Mhm.
right way to teach it at a Catholic institution? So all of that needs to be figured out and it's happening. It's happening in such a wonderful way.
Wow.
We both by our standards, but then also by the example of institutions like Catholic International University.
Thank you for saying that. I know we're like I said, we're so excited to be a part of this mission, not only informing forming students through our programs, but also informing educators. We have our Catholic liberal arts education master's degree, and at some point, I hope that we can have you on the podcast with Dr. Ann Brodeur because she can talk about this
That would
all the
be great.
time, and it's absolutely amazing the work that she's doing informing educators to create that ethos that you're
Mhm.
talking about. So. Yeah, so we're so grateful for the mission of the Cardinal Newman Society, and like you said, just really building an ethos of a culture that has students, but also educators that are truly informed in what it means to be human. And our mission is truly human centered, and we're fully online. We are able to reach people in every single time zone. And I just wanted to talk a little bit with you about, what really is our place in the Cardinal Newman Guide as an online school.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the human formation, I think, is part of what's been lost from education
Mhm,
generally, not just Catholic education, but across the board. And I suppose people would tend to think of it as an additional challenge for an online program. But
mhm,
I think many of the challenges are the same across all education.
mhm,
The difficulties of preparing young people for a career, and that seems to be, the primary focus for most people getting an undergraduate degree, certainly,
mhm,
and certainly a graduate degree, looking toward a particular career, and yet not being so focused on simply becoming useful, right?
absolutely.
That we're trying to form young people to be what God has called them to be. And so that's using their intellect and using it in a proper way. And also forming their will and their passions and everything that comes together, all the different parts of the soul, so that it's all directed toward one end. And that's citing again our patron, St. John Henry Newman, who said that, the young people who would come to his university came to him with all of these different faculties of their soul warring against each other. So their will wanted to take them one way, and their passions, the things that they were interested, wanted to take them another way. And yet intellectually, they knew that they needed to go a different way.
Mhm,
And he said the task of Catholic education is to reunite all of those. So they're all directed toward God, they're all directed toward what is good. And that's something that is a challenge for all of education because frankly, young people today are really disintegrated, and we
mhm,
need to reintegrate them. And that's a an enormous task, whether you're doing it online, you're doing it in person.
mhm,
Um, and so I think that needs to be the focus. I think sometimes people focus too much on the challenges of technology,
mhm,
and yet, I'm old enough to remember the days of the long phone conversation, which young people don't seem to do
mhm,
much anymore. They stay away from the phone. But I used to love those days of being on the phone and really being attentive to someone and really listening to them in a way, frankly, that you might not do if you were in person with each other. And
right.
so technology had certain benefits and certain ways of cultivating relationships as well as in other respects, pulling away. And so I think we have the exact same challenges today with AI, with
Mhm,
online, with all of these things, finding ways to be human in everything that we're
mhm,
doing. And if you have well-formed faculty, you have well-formed people who are doing it, they already instinctively understand and feel when things are not right, right? This is
right.
not a good Christian relationship I have with my students. It's just, it's I find this with, I've done some online teaching, and it's easy sometimes to just treat people as kind of a name
Mhm,
on a sheet. Um, and you have to always remember the personal experiences, and you have to reach out in different ways that maybe you wouldn't
mhm,
otherwise. And yet I also find, like I said with the telephone, that there are ways of having a conversation with people online that just, I don't know, it's a in some ways a richer conversation when you're talking to someone
mhm.
by video even than when you're in person.
That's beautiful. It reminds me of this quote from Antiqua et Nova, which is the church embraces what is new when it serves what is true.
Mm,
And I really think that that speaks to exactly what you're saying, which is we can't be afraid of new technologies. They're coming and they are going to be a part of our society, as you said, and we've continued to watch that evolve. We need to embrace them, but we need to embrace them in such a way that it serves humanity instead of working against it. And so
right.
I love that you're seeing that in your own, online teaching, and, of course, that's, something that we have created at Catholic International University. One of the things that we do is that we have Divine Mercy Nights, and we have online lectures, and I've joined them before, and it's amazing to see students joining from all over the world
Mm,
and able to share what they're praying for and what their life experience is, and, um, you know, 50 years ago, that would have been unheard of. 30 years ago, that would have been unheard of, right? And so it's
right.
amazing that we have that opportunity to hear these experiences. The same thing with our faculty members. We have a chair of one of our departments from Rome and a chair from Portugal. And
Mhm.
I really think that that can broaden, especially when we're talking about theology, our understanding of the church. Because I think, especially in America, we can get so focused on the issues that we see in front of us and think, everything that the church is doing is directed towards us, when in reality, the church is universal, and it's serving every society. And I think that having that universal aspect or international aspect can really serve our theology students in that way. So
Oh, sure.
I'm really grateful. Another thing that you said about not focusing on the utilitarian nature of education, but focusing on how can we create full humans, kinda reminded me of, Saint Catherine of Sienna's quote, which is, "If you are who you should be, you'll set the world on fire."
Mhm.
I really believe, in this day and age, I think, of course, that the ideals that we have in Catholic education are eternally true, but we're really seeing, the fruit of it here because of the rapid change of jobs, right? What I was encouraged to go into 10 years ago, those jobs don't exist anymore.
Mhm.
And so educating the whole person will allow, these students to serve society wherever it goes and in ways that we don't even know that don't exist yet. So
That's right. Yeah, I had a good friend. I remember years ago, before I got married, I had a roommate who had studied in the School of Foreign Service and had studied, I think it was, they called it Sovietology in those days, where you were studying the Soviet Union and
Mhm.
learning everything about their economy and everything that happened. And then the wall fell and then the Soviet Union fell. And he went a completely different direction. But this was someone who was delightful, very well formed, had a great moral sense, had a great social attitude, was very smart, knew how to think around a problem, and went on to have a very successful career doing a few different things. He's gone a few different directions over that time and has done very well. And so I think that's very much what we're trying to form in Catholic education. It's so important. I'll give you another quote though. There is so G.K. Chesterton said that I'm paraphrasing here, but that Catholic or that education should never embrace any fad that's younger than their students.
Wow.
and and I think that general point is also very valid that we've seen this happen, like say with the Common Core
Mhm.
standards or these other things, where someone comes up with this new way of doing math or new way of teaching, and then it suddenly sweeps the nation and everything changes. And we don't even know yet whether it's tested, the impact that it'll have on
Mhm.
young people. Same thing happened in colleges and universities. You don't have to worry about this with Catholic International, but when in the 70s, every college and university in the country, including most Catholic colleges and universities, went to, co-ed dorms and all of
Mhm.
that sort of thing. And it was this experiment based on a certain theory and a certain feeling without any sense of what kind of impact this was going to
Mhm.
have on young people and on education. And so, when we look at things like AI, when we look at these new technologies, a lot of which aren't so new anymore, they're certainly older
Mhm.
than the students we're teaching. Um, we're just starting to learn how to use them well, and that's why we need institutions like Catholic International who are really thinking this through from a clear Catholic
Mhm.
approach and saying, "How can we do this in the right way?" And I'm sure there have been hits and misses along the way, but this will help the rest of the world to do it rightly, and I'm hoping that, more and more the rest of the world can look to the Catholic Church for leadership on things like technology, which I know Pope Leo,
Mhm.
wants to talk a lot about, so
Absolutely. It really is the conversation of the age that we're living in right now. And it's so important. And, our president that's been at the forefront of her mind since she joined us, which is not only, like, as you said, how do we utilize technologies well and serve the human person? But is there any way that we can also form the ethos? And so that's why we have our emerging technologies department coming out, which
mhm,
will train product developers in prudential design of emerging
mhm,
technologies so that the human person is always at the forefront. And, because regardless of those that come to us as students, we also live in a society and we want to serve humans that are outside of it as well. And,
mhm,
can we prevent things like child social media addiction or, whatever the thing is that we're worried about? Is there anything that we can do to come in and bring ethics and say, these people really, they need to be served well, and what we're doing is not that. So,
yeah.
I'm very excited about, the launch of that department. Well, again, thank you so much for joining this discussion. I just wanna hear from you, if you've been worked in Catholic education for so long, and you've seen the pitfalls, and you've seen, the what the focus should be, and I just want to hear from you what you believe the priorities of a Catholic institution like us, what should they be?
Yeah, so I would go back to Newman again, where he talked about the importance of a university being Catholic. He
Mhm,
actually said that a secular university is not fully what it claims to be
mhm,
because it lacks its Catholic identity. And there were three reasons, three levels in which he said that. I mean, number one, if you're excluding the branch of theology, if you're not willing to even
mhm,
engage in an understanding of what we're taught by revelation, then you're excluding a whole branch of knowledge. So you're
mhm,
not truly a university if you exclude
mhm,
any branch of knowledge, right? But then secondly, he talked about the integration of the faith into all the courses, that it doesn't matter what you're studying, the faith does have a relationship to what you're studying. It's foundational to
mhm,
anything. If you're studying math, it's foundational to mathematics, is the order of the world that
mhm.
God created. It's foundational certainly to any human study of history or sociology or anything really. And then on the third level, he talked about grace and the importance of being of having the sacraments, of being engaged with the church, because that's what elevates your learning and your virtues and everything else. And so it really
Absolutely.
affects an education. And it's probably on that third level. I mean, certainly, Catholic International University has done an amazing job, definitely on the first two, right? I mean,
Mhm.
there's no question about the strength of the theology and that it's orthodox and it's faithful to Catholic teaching, which
Right.
unfortunately it's not true at many other institutions. And then the integration into all of the coursework and into everything, which comes with hiring good faculty who understand that. um, I think probably the biggest challenge in an online program
Mhm.
is that third, right?
Right.
Because the life, the religious life, the prayer life, the sacramental life of the students is not something that you're going to be
Right.
directly engaged in as you might in a campus life, right?
Absolutely.
And so I'm always curious how and always trying to think of ways in which like an online program can really enhance that and
Yeah.
make sure that students are availing themselves of the
Absolutely.
sacraments and of the grace that God provides.
Right. Yeah. We're so grateful for our student life department and the work that they do. They are consistently offering prayer nights, Divine Mercy evenings, as well as lectures on these very issues.
Mm,
And so, in it is true that given the nature, we can't offer anything that's tangible, and so that, like, by definition, we can't offer the sacraments. But focusing on the importance of the sacraments and encouraging that faith life in that community. In addition, we do offer Holy Days of Obligation off, and so that
mm,
we ensure that our students have the access to the sacraments on those days, and, they're not going to work and then going to school and not having that opportunity. So, I do believe that that's a major priority of ours, and, it's unfortunate that it's, again, the nature of it is that we can't, by definition, receive or offer the sacraments,
Right.
but I'm so grateful for our student life department for enriching that community in that way, so.
Yeah, I can see that, and, I think so much is taught to young people, and I'm including young adults in that. Sometimes we think of young adults as being much more adult than young,
So true.
um, but they're still young, and the impact of witness, right? So when you have faculty members who just simply talk about it
Absolutely.
and reference what was talked about in mass the last Sunday, or just making it clear that this is part of a Catholic life, I think is probably really impactful.
I was just, talking with our chair of theology, and we were addressing this issue about how, she gave this beautiful analogy on the study of theology where she said, if you're studying biology, and then you forget that the organisms that you're studying are living, then you're not studying biology anymore. You're studying geology. And I thought that was so beautiful because her point there was, if we're studying theology, and forgetting that it's the living word, then we're studying history, we're not studying theology anymore, and, it's so easy to fall into that, I think, if you're not enriching, like you said, modeling and enriching, a lifestyle that's connected to the living word, that's connected to the person of Jesus Christ, and I'm so grateful for her and for all of our faculty members for modeling that and modeling what it looks like to study connected, to study connected to the person of Jesus Christ, and it inspires me on a daily basis, honestly, so.
Yeah, yeah, that's wonderful, and I've certainly seen and met, graduates of Catholic International who've gone on to do wonderful things, and they're great examples in themselves, great
Mhm,
witnesses, and I think that's so important. I think one of the things we forget sometimes with when we talk about the integration of faith into the various disciplines is there's, on the intellectual level in terms of the curriculum, how it's taught, there's
mhm,
that, but there's also just right, if these young people are called to go in a certain direction and to work in a career or work in a particular field, it ought to be something that's part of their path to sainthood, right? It ought to be
absolutely.
something that's helping them to live out their Christian life. And so being able to explore that in a classroom where you have other, young Christian students who can engage with you on those things, and then also having professors who can address those topics and just help people see that uh, there's a very cold atheistic way of becoming a whatever it is, really anything, right? Whether you're going into computer programming or going into business or going into even theology. I think there are theologians out there who are
Absolutely.
very kind of cold and calculating in the way that they do theology rather
Right.
than seeing it as embodying who they are as a Christian.
Absolutely. It's so countercultural to think in this way, but it's so freeing. I mean, I can't imagine I was raised in a household that encouraged me to look at the Cardinal Newman Society to choose my college, to choose my university, and I'm so grateful for that. I can't even imagine how demeaning it would be to be told that I was meant for a specific trade and that's it. That would just be so heartbreaking. And so I'm just so grateful for the work that you're all doing, and, I just believe it's so life-giving and so freeing to young people, so,
Yes, yeah.
yeah. Thank you so much for joining this podcast. Thank you so much for having this conversation and for partnering with us, and thank you so much for all of the work that you're doing. We're behind you all the way, and we're just, we can't wait to see how your mission propels forward from
Okay,
here,
well,
so.
same with us. I mean, we exist to cheerlead institutions like yours, and so we're so thrilled with Catholic International and everything that you're doing, and, may God bless it, and may God bless all the people involved in it and who are supporting it, and the graduates and everyone who's involved with it.
Thank you.